Hello, TCDA friends. You're here. Let's do this. My name is Mark Burrows, and I'm a composer, an educator, and a choral editor with Heritage Music Press. And you are here at a session called If They Love It. Well, when I was an elementary music teacher or a preschool music teacher, or during my time being a choir director for elementary school, preschool, high school, adults, older adults, I always felt like my primary role was to get people to fall in love with music. To see music, in fact, really all the arts, as essential as a way to experience and express their deepest feelings and truest selves, and as a way to have a constructive means for dealing with the deep stuff. And I always felt like, and maybe you had this experience too, that when our students fall in love with the music, that we could teach them anything, because at that point they were so hungry for it. They just wanted to learn more about it. And the reverse isn't necessarily true, is it? I mean, we can teach the notes and rhythms. We can teach the composer dates. We can teach the different timbres of the different instruments, but that's no guarantee that they're going to fall in love with it. But if they love it, they'll learn it. They'll want to have music in their lives in some capacity for the rest of their lives. And that's really what excites me. That's what I want to do. And so we're going to spend the next hour or so exploring some ways that we can do that. And some of these may be tried and true that you already know, in which case this is kind of cementing that knowledge in your head and going, yes, yes, you're doing it right. And maybe we'll throw a couple of curveballs at you too. I want to remind you to find your notes. I've got my copy of notes here. You should have those somewhere in digital form. And I want to let you know that the notes, and I've got my paper copy here, those notes are really for me. They're not for you. I mean, I want you to be able to follow along, but I love talking about this stuff, and I can just go down a number of delicious bunny trails, but the notes help me stay accountable and on task. And it reminds me, Mark, you've been talking for 30 minutes and you're still on page 1. So here we go. And by the way, as I'm holding my paper notes for this digital session, I'm going to try and make our time together decidedly low tech, because I know we can only handle so much tech. And so a lot of the things that we're going to explore today are things that you can do through technology, but with very little tech otherwise. Okay? All right, here we go. So with the if they love it, they'll learn it approach, one of the things that is important to me is the idea of finding positive ways to frame things, replacing the litany of don'ts with empowering do's, saying don't touch your neighbor, any instruction that a dead skunk could follow. Don't touch your neighbor. Yeah, a dead skunk can follow that instruction. That really just once again, it just keeps that negativity going. Instead, let's find a way to say things in a positive way. Now let's look at a couple of choral techniques and how we can find positive language. Well, one of the things that we often see, or more really probably more often hear, is tension in the sound, real tightness. And often that tightness is in you can see it in the chins jutting out and in the necks. So rather than say, just relax, which I don't know about you, but anytime someone has ever told me to just relax, you're too tense, that just makes me more tense. It makes me nervous. It makes me feel self-conscious. So one of the positive ways that we can alleviate that and encourage relaxation is when you're working on a piece, sing through a piece, start with a phrase, and simply say, as you're singing through this phrase, sing and move your head side to side. Not don't have tension in your neck, not don't tighten up, but move your head from side to side. Because if you've ever noticed, it's really hard to move your head side to side when it's really tense. In fact, ow, that kind of hurts. I'm not going to do that again. But if you've ever noticed that when there's tension, moving the head side to side, it's a great way to foster relaxation. You're not having to say don't. In fact, you're not even having to say relax and make your singer self-conscious. Just that, and the next thing I know, the sound is smoother. And ask them, "What? Do you hear a difference in the sound?" Yeah, maybe some do, maybe some don't. But maybe one will volunteer. Yeah, it just sounds like this, more open, more fresh, healthier, and that's because of the tension. Then you can say, you know what, you're singing so much more freely. Another positive approach can be sometimes when there's a lack of breath support, we can say, oh, stand up or you're not supporting the breath. Not, don't. Or the placement is too far back. If you've ever noticed that, especially with, well, I won't say especially with young boys, it could be young boys or young girls who want to sound more mature, and so that they kind of swallow that sound. A simple, fun thing to do, first of all, say this. You want to play a game? Yeah, everybody wants to play a game. Now, is this a really super fun game? It's more like an exercise, but we're going to frame it as a game. So you want to play a game? All right, here's how it works. Let's start with a song. Let's say it's Over the River and Through the Woods. And you've noticed in listening to the sound that they're really swallowing the sound, that the placement is too far back, and you want that placement more forward. Say, let's bubble it, which is what I use for a lip trill. Let's bubble the song. Okay, now this time what we're going to do is think the words, and I'm going to start by saying bubble, but then when I say words, you go right into the words wherever we are in the song. And it may take a couple of times to get the idea. Okay, let's start in the bubble. Words, to grandmother's house we go. And what's happening is, as they bubble, that sound is coming forward. It's buzzing right here in the nose a little bit. In fact, sometimes when we bubble or lip trill, does your nose itch a little bit? Mine does. But that bubble gets that sound forward. And if you bubble and then go right into the words from that, first of all, they're having fun playing a game because they're listening. When is it going to go to the words? And when do we go back to the bubble? And go through a whole verse, go through the whole song like that. And that sound is so much more forward, and they're not pressing with those sweet little throats and their necks, and the breath support is better. It's a simple, fun thing to do that moves the sound forward without a series of don'ts. Okay, so I'm looking at the clock, and I've already been talking for 7 minutes. By the way, have you been in a lot of virtual meetings? Have you ever noticed that you spend more time looking at you in the virtual meetings? It's weird, right? I kind of do the same thing, and I'm kind of tired of seeing me, and I'm really tired of seeing the clock tick by with me doing all the talking. So now it's time for us to get up and do something. This is a classic. So this is the old 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This can be done as a body warm up, and what you do is you shake this hand 5 times and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then this hand 5 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then this foot 5 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then this foot 5 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we do this hand 4 times, and so on. Now I've got a vision that all of us are actually doing, wherever you are, if you're watching on an iPad, if you're at the beach somewhere, or if you're at home, that we're all actually doing it, and you're not just sitting there, munching on a carrot or whatever you're eating. I don't know, maybe with some hummus on it. Let's do this together. Let's really do it, and let's say it out loud. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. Have a seat. Thank you for doing that with me. I hope you were doing that with me. So there's a couple of great benefits for doing that. First of all, it's a great way to get the body moving, and it's fun. It works really well if you've got, when I was teaching elementary music, I had 5th graders first thing in the morning. Those guys just came dragging in. They're practically teenagers, and they're like the seniors of the elementary school. And so sometimes just to wake them up rather than, y'all, come on, we need more energy, wake up. Once again, when has that ever really worked? Instead, do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like a little jolt. It's also great for that first class after lunch, just to kind of get them woken up. Another benefit, and this may be my favorite benefit. Have you ever had the experience where you're working with your choir, and you're in the choir room or the music room, and it's the safe space where they've got all of the Here Comes Treble poster and the barred instruments, and it just feels safe. And then they have to go sing in the auditorium or the cafetorium or wherever, and it just feels big, and there's all these eyes on them. First of all, get some time in the space before they have to sing. Do that exercise, because sometimes when we get in those big spaces that feel intimidating, we draw into ourselves. But doing the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nice and big kind of helps you feel like you own the space a little bit. It's just it helps things come to life, and helps them feel big, and they start getting outside themselves a little bit more, and it helps the sound too. So give that a try. Okay, so when I was developing these notes and this our time together, I really did kind of have half of my brain in the classroom and half of my brain thinking, well, Mark, there's a real good chance that we're either going to be still doing classes virtually or half virtually. I certainly don't know. It's July, so who knows? So I wanted to make sure that we had some ways to connect with our students, that could also be done in a context where they're at home and you're at home, but you're working through some kind of virtual mode to connect. And so I wanted to talk about going on a sound safari. Now, is this the most heavy duty community music making experience ever? No, but it's a good way to get them thinking musically, to thinking about music around them. That just because we can't all be together in the same place at the same time singing together, the music has not died. The music is still very much alive. The music is in them. The music is in you. The music is in me. The music is where they are. And so challenging them to go on sometimes I'll call it a stuff safari or a sound safari, where they go looking for found sounds. And if you've ever, of course, one of my favorite groups is Stomp, but just get them to go try to find instruments around the house, or things that can be instruments. I always encourage them, nothing breakable, no live animals, no dead animals, and make sure they have their responsible grown-ups' permission. One of my favorite drums in the whole world is a 5-gallon water bottle. Isn't that a great sound? And it was free. We've got a little bucket here. Of course, just rattles. They can make instruments at home using, we all know how to make rattles. By the way, I would very much like to encourage that when we make rattles, that we do so using plastic beads or something that's not food. This is a hungry planet, and the more we can make our arts and crafts that don't utilize food that could go in someone's belly, I think that's responsible use of our resources. So there's also a whole recycling vibe, which is good. There's the cowbell out of a coffee can. Of course, bucket drumming is fun. And then measuring cups of 2 different sizes. So challenge them. Maybe if you're going to meet with them once a week, or once every 2 weeks, or twice a week, whatever your rhythm is with your students, say, okay, we're going to have found sound time, and they can show the instruments. Or if you are in the class in person, spend some time doing that. I know in my first setting where I taught, we didn't have a whole lot of store-bought instruments. And I kind of remember saying a few times, well, if you don't have an instrument, just use body percussion or just use a found sound. But I want to get rid of the word just and say, use body percussion or use found sounds or make up an instrument. Find creative ways to make music. We've got a lot of limitations going on in the world right now, but there's no need for the music to stop. We just have to remember that we get to be creative in that. All right. Speaking of creative, I want us to do something different right now. So the 2 most powerful things, I think, for us as humans is our story and our song. And I love the stories of the great composers of the past. And when in my time teaching in an elementary school, or even working with junior high and high school, I would sometimes want to share a story of a composer, because we know that when you know someone's story, it helps you cherish them a little bit more, or respect where they came from a little bit more, or at least try to find that connection to be a little more interested in their life. But when I would try to read these stories to my students, it was just as dry as toast. It came across like a book report, and or I would there's some great videos, and we could watch a video, or now you could send a YouTube link, and but then it's really passive, and it's like they're watching a movie. They're not involved with it. They're not part of the story. And so, starting in late March, I started developing something called Classics Come Alive, which tells some of the great stories of classical music. Sometimes it's a composer, sometimes it's a performer, like there's one on Marian Anderson. Sometimes it's on a significant event, like the golden records that were launched into space, that are kind of almost like a musical time capsule. So I thought we would have a little fun with one. And once again, this is something that you could do in the classroom, like if you're exploring Schubert, who we're going to look at right now, or Beethoven, you could do this. Or if you're in a virtual learning situation, rather than just give them a video they can watch, this gives you a chance to interact with your students where they're active, but it doesn't have to be completely in sync, like trying to put together some kind of choral performance via Zoom, which we all know doesn't exactly work. Okay, so let me get my readers. And I'm actually going to use my notebook for this. And you can just, it's a note on a notebook. You can make one. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to show you what to do. And I would love it if you are the students this time. And then this is in your notes. Feel free to use it. And if you're curious about Classics Come Alive, this will probably be a resource through Heritage Music Press at some point. It's not right now, but for now, this one's free for you. Anyway, so this story is about one piece of music and the mystery surrounding it. Listen closely. You have 3 different sounds to make throughout the story. Whenever you hear the word, and see, we're teaching them to be active listeners. Already, they're more engaged. So whenever you hear the word mystery, make a woo sound. Let's hear yours. I think some of you are doing it and some of you have your mouth full. Let's try that again. Mystery. Ooh. Now, whenever you hear me say unfinished, you have to go dun, dun, dun. Let's practice that. Unfinished. Dun, dun, dun. And then every time you hear Schubert, you have to sing this. Schubert, Franz Schubert, which is part of his unfinished symphony. That's the second theme from his first movement. So Schubert, Schubert, Franz Schubert. Okay, those are the 3 sounds to listen for. Here comes the story. Franz Schubert, Schubert, Franz Schubert was born in Austria in 1797. He composed music for choirs, piano pieces, hundreds of songs, and several symphonies. But perhaps the work for which he is most well known is his Symphony No. 8 in B minor, known as the Unfinished. Dun, dun, dun. Why did he leave it unfinished? Dun, dun, dun. That turns out to be a bit of a mystery. Ooh. How do we know it's unfinished? Dun, dun, dun. Well, back in the time of Schubert, Franz Schubert, most symphonies had 4 major separate segments known as movements. But this symphony, number 8, only had 2 completed movements plus the beginning of a third. To this day, experts disagree on why Schubert, Franz Schubert, left his 8th symphony unfinished. Dun, dun, dun. Maybe it was because the first 2 movements plus the beginning of the third were all in triple meter, which would have been unusual for the time. Some believe that Schubert, Franz Schubert, became more interested in working on other pieces. It's a mystery. Ooh. Another mystery, ooh, is why it took so long for the unfinished dun, dun, dun symphony to receive its first public performance. Schubert, Schubert, Franz Schubert, had given the full manuscript to a member of a music society in Austria in 1822. But the work was completely forgotten. It wasn't premiered until 1865. Schubert, Franz Schubert, never got to hear it performed since he had died 37 years prior. Maybe there was concern that audiences wouldn't care for a symphony that was unfinished. Dun, dun, dun. But audiences and critics loved it and still do. Over the years, many musicians have tried to complete this work. Others continue to try to explain why Schubert, Franz Schubert, left it unfinished. Dun, dun, dun. It may always simply be a beautiful, wonderful mystery. Ooh. So, super simple. They're involved in it the whole time, getting a little bit of Schubert melody, and it just keeps them engaged. If they love it, they'll learn it. If we're going to expect them to sit still and be quiet while we simply read something to them, they're never going to be, not yet. They're never going to be as engaged as if we can find those ways to help them be part of the story. Okay, so let's get to another part. And this is another place where, in a choir rehearsal in particular, I could really lose my students. And what would happen is they would start saying, oh, this song is so boring. Well, hopefully I picked music that was something that they could love and embrace. It just, the way I was teaching it was boring. And the truth is, and most of us know this from experience, is that the notes mostly come pretty quickly compared to memorizing the words. Sometimes that can be one of the hardest things, is memorizing all that text, especially if you have like multiple verses and like, well, which verse are we on now? So let's play 3 games once again. Games are incredibly important. You know, I think the 2 most magical phrases in childhood are once upon a time and let's play a game. When you say one of those phrases, you've got them. You've got to deliver once you say those phrases. So let's start with our first game, and this is erase a word. And earlier I was bubbling a song called Over the River and Through the Woods. So, ooh, what? Look at that. So here's what we're going to do. So we're imagine that we're at a point in the rehearsal where they've got the notes, they've got the rhythms, but the words are just tricky. So one of the things that we can do is say, okay, let's sing through all of that so far. Over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. And of course, I'm doing a smaller version because this is a short session. Normally I'd write the whole verse or the whole song on multiple pieces of chart paper or on a dry erase. And then pick one person with an eraser and say, I would like you to erase 2 words. Okay, and now they've got to fill in. Now you have to sing the whole thing. You can't skip what the words are. You have to sing the words that are missing too. And then they sing, over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. And you pick another student. Okay, you have to erase 3 words. What? And they're still like, no way. And then over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. And then you have another person, you do it again, and then you get to one person, okay, and you do it kind of in a stage whisper. Okay, I want you to erase all the words. And all the other students are like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Are we ever going to do it? And then all the words are erased. And then you sing through it. And they know it. And they know it cold. And it's so much fun. And it's a simple game. And they get to play it. And is it a game? No, you're memorizing. You're getting them to memorize the words. But you're phrasing it like a game, and you're adding just that little bit of play. And that makes such a big difference. And play, let me take just a quick time out. In a minute, we're going to look at some of the repertoire. And one of the things I mentioned is the pieces being just for fun or not just for fun. And I put the word just in quotes, excuse me, while I hydrate. Hydration is very important. That if we can get rid of the word just, as if fun, there's something wrong with fun or the idea of play. You know, Mr. Rogers would remind us that play is the work of childhood. It's how children make sense of the world and their place in it. And I don't know about you, but I'm having a hard time making sense of the world right now and finding my place in it. And perhaps one part of the solution is that we actually play more. Okay, getting back to some of the games. So where does the melody stop is another one. Let's take our old friend Over the River and Through the Woods. I had no idea in July I was going to be playing this song so much. This is a fun game to play too. If they've got their sheet music in front of them, it's a great way for them to audiate and follow along. And what you do is you play the melody on the piano, and then you stop. And then you ask them, what word did I stop on? And they can pick a quiet hand. Through. Okay, and so then you try it again. Grandmothers. And then you go through the whole song like that. That's another way for them. What are they doing? They're memorizing it. They're getting tons of repetition with that song. Oh, excuse me for a second. My motion detector. My motion detector thinks there's no one in here. I'm still here. Are you still here? Okay, good. So it's a great way to continue to get the reps in without it feeling repetitious. And another benefit of doing that way, especially sometimes my throat's just not up to it. I mean, I don't know how y'all, 6 classes every day, 45 minutes, singing, using that voice. This is a great way to rest your throat a little bit, but you still want the kids actively learning. You do not want to throw in a video and have them just plop down and look at a screen. It's a great way for them to be actively learning the music while you can rest your voice a little bit. I highly recommend it. And finally, and this one really works better with younger children, so I don't necessarily recommend this one with, like 5th graders, but kindergarten, young 1st grade, kindergarten, and if you've got pre-K in your campus, having a puppet. And this is Octavia, the operatic octopus. Hello! Now, there's a lot of benefits to using a puppet. It's almost like having a guest clinician in the room with you because, you can teach them this and teach them that. And sometimes it's just good to have another voice in the room teaching. They will listen. Any of us who have ever brought in a guest clinician, they can say the exact same thing that you've been saying for years, but it's a new person saying it. And everybody's like, wow, this is so revolutionary. And you're like, I tell you this every week. But just having that other person in the room can really help. And a puppet can be that, especially for our young people who still have that sense of imagination and play and don't mind that you're using a puppet and don't think it's too babyish yet. And then they go through a phase where the last thing they want is a puppet. And then in late high school in particular, they kind of think puppets are cool and quirky again. So here's where kids get to be the teacher. Once again, you're using a positive example. So you're not saying, no, that's not how that song goes. Saying, Octavia, yes, oh, I heard you doing a song, and I would like to try and sing it. And would you be my teachers? And the kids are like, yeah, because kids love to be the teachers. What are they doing on spring break? Play in school. So the kids get to be the teachers, and Octavia is going to sing the song, but she might not get all the words right. So if she messes up on a word, will you tell her what the word is? Okay, all right, here we go. Over the river and through the woods to grandmother's cat we go. Cat? No, that's silly. Of course, the little ones just think that's hysterical. No, it's grandmother's house. Okay, let me try that again. Over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house we burp, burp. And of course, by now your pre-Ks are just on the floor belly laughing. But no, it's a grandmother's house we go. And little by little, you work your way through the song and they find that they've got it. So it's a simple, fun thing to do. You don't do it all the time, but every once in a while. Thank you, Octavia. You're welcome. So 3 simple ways to get the reps in without it feeling repetition. Not yet. Okay, let's spend just a moment talking about repertoire. I'm going to put on my readers again because I want to really make sure that I've got this in my notes. So repertoire is really important. The choices that we make in the songs, in the pieces that our young people are going to learn, it really is important, and it's worth spending a good bit of time. That's why there's all these reading sessions. And look, this is not going to be a reading session. We're not going to read through pieces. I mean, I get it. Budgets, what budgets, right? So, but the repertoire is important. So whatever repertoire you do have, and when you get to the point at some point in the future where you are able to not only be in the classroom, but look and dream for the future, and you go to a reading session and you find that perfect piece, yes. So there's some things I want us to be looking for when we're looking for those perfect pieces, or at least really good pieces. So notice I didn't say if they really like it, they'll learn it. This session is called If They Love It, They'll Learn It. And love is more complex than simply fun. Although pieces that are fun, don't dismiss those. And those don't necessarily have to be in the novelty slot at the very end of the program or the encore. Finding pieces that are fun, that are fun to sing, that have a good rhythm. They don't even have to be funny, but just are energizing. That's great, but we can do more than that. Look for meaningful texts, and that text can be a setting of a classic poem. One of the pieces I recommend is The Road Not Taken by Ruth Elaine Schramm, and there's wonderful other settings of that poem as well. And just that whole idea of the choices that we make throughout life, and choosing the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And I really relate to the first part of that poem where it says, two roads diverge in the yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. And it's profound, and it's rich. And when we teach them the music for that, whatever that setting happens to be, they will internalize those words. They will carry that poem with them the rest of their lives, and they will need it at some point the rest of their lives. And what a valuable thing you're doing for them, is giving them not just a heart song, but heart words, something to tell themselves to get them through both the good times and the hard times. So meaningful texts, and those can also be original texts, texts that speak to our common humanity, both the celebrations that we have and the struggles that we're going through. And struggles are very real, and our young people deserve emotional authenticity in a text. They deserve more than just trite, here's another text about making the rafters ring, or but nothing wrong with that, but just saying that we need to go deeper than that, and we need to model that music is a safe place to experience and express our deepest feelings and truest selves. So music and texts that model that. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to say, I have chosen this piece. I have purchased this piece with some of our budget dollars, and we are spending a significant amount of time in this piece because you, as young people, you students, getting to express and experience those feelings really matters. It matters to me, and it matters to the world. That was a little soapboxy. Apologize. Continuing to hydrate. And writing responsibly for young voices. You probably found this out either on purpose or accidentally. For me, it was accidentally. Some pieces that sounded great in a reading session or sounded great, the model recording, and then we get it with our own students. And we're like, what's happening? Why is this not working so well? Why is this not working out? Look at how it's written. Are the ranges going really low into the chesty register? Is it really high? Is it getting up at the very top of the staff on a bright E vowel, which can kind of be a little bit shrill for those sweet treble voices? Is it lingering too low too long? Is it in two parts, but part two is just always singing a third below the melody without anything interesting of its own? So ask those questions as you're looking through the repertoire. Make sure that the pieces you're choosing offer experiences where they're like, oh, I love this. Oh, this is great. And even part two, I love the writers who know how to write well for part two, so that even when it's the harmony, it's engaging. It's not just something to throw away. And repertoire really gives us a chance to model what we truly value. And we've talked about some of that with texts that are meaningful. Also, I want it's an opportunity to look at, we talk about how we value diversity. Um, our repertoire choices are a real opportunity to show that we mean that. Are we simply picking in each program one multicultural piece? And boy, I'd love it if we can get away from using the word multicultural and really identifying each individual culture for itself. Are we just picking one multicultural piece to put on the program so we can check the diversity box? That sends a message, doesn't it? It sends a message that diversity is something that's a box to be checked, rather than something to be embraced, to be modeled, to be celebrated, to be sung. So looking for pieces from many different cultures, from voices of different cultures, and composers and arrangers from the communities that we want to embrace as well. I think that is something that I'm taking on as a personal challenge as an educator, as a composer and arranger, and as an editor, that we do more to not just say the word diversity, but to really lift it up, to empower young composers who are coming up so that we have so many rich voices in what we're doing. By the way, my email address is on the top of these notes, so if you have ideas on that, I would love for you to send those my way. If you know promising composers and arrangers who you think deserve to be celebrated, send them my way. Anyway, our repertoire is very important. We spend so much time in the music that the pieces we pick really need to be saying something, because those young eyes, those young ears, and those young hearts are paying attention. Okay, that was serious. So there's a few suggestions, a few repertoire suggestions. These are just a few. It's just a handful that I've found that are massively profound in one way or another. So take a look at those. You can do that on your own time. You know how to Google. All right, let's look at a couple of very simple, fun games that can teach music literacy skills. And once again, these are games that you can play in your classroom, but I wanted to come up with a couple of games that could also be done via virtual learning, which is a real possibility this coming fall. So I wanted to equip you. I think that's important. So the first game, let me bring back my sliding wall. Isn't that cool? Is the fermata game. And there's fermata. You can just draw a fermata on a card. Sometimes a kid will work on a piece and a kid will say, hey, what's that thing that looks like an eyeball? I'm like, well, that's a fermata. What? And then I explain what a fermata means. And a fermata means watch the conductor, which is what, every Italian musical term, basically subito piano, watch the conductor, prestissimo, watch the conductor. Really what it means is to hold whatever note you're on for a given length of time, usually what the conductor deems it to be, and hopefully that conductor has done a fair amount of research to know how long to hold it within the context of the piece. I'm getting in the weeds here. Anyway, a fun game to play is the fermata game, and here's how it works. We're going to sing, oh, well, let's just stick with it. It's gotten us this far. Over the river and through the woods. And every time I hold up the fermata sign, you have to hold on whatever word I held up. And then when I put the fermata sign down, we'll keep singing the song. So here we go. Over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. Get the idea? You could do this with all of your students unmuted, and it's okay. Everybody will have whatever their bandwidth is for their both figurative and literal. They will eventually catch up with the fermata, and if it doesn't sound exact, that's okay. And I think it's fun every once in a while to unmute everyone and just embrace the catastrophe, because it's great for them to hear each other, even if it's not in tune or in tempo. Just remembering that we still are a community. So this is an opportunity to do that. Here's another one. This is a fun game to play that you can do in a classroom context, and let's explore that first. And then maybe examine a couple of ways that we could do that virtually. So this is music symbol matching, and here's how it works. I just did these on crayon and cardstock. So you make pairs. You make pairs of all these cards and you mix them up face down. And as the students enter, or you put them in a place for them to sit, okay, get a card, don't show it to anyone. Then you mix up the pairs and then you take turns. And one student picks two and calls the students by name. Mark and Marisol. And Mark holds up that, and Marisol holds up that. Oh, we don't have a match yet. Okay, cards down. Then the next person in the circle says and calls out two more names until you get a pair. And then when you get a pair, that pair of students continues to hold up their music symbols, and then you have to say what those music symbols are and a brief description of what they do, but you don't take long because you're in the middle of a game. And if you take too long to explain what it is, they're going to be onto you. And like, this is not a game. We're learning stuff. So make sure that you do it, make it snappy, but you are trying to do some music literacy concepts. The other thing is when they're calling the name, Mark, Marisol, John, whatever, they're calling each other by name. So it's not, well, here's how all the singers in the room are relating to the conductor or how all the students online are relating to me. It's how they're relating to each other. It's a subtle way to continue to build community, right? Calling each other by name. That seems really, really simple, right? Calling one another by name, but it's not. It's really, really important. If they love it, they'll learn it. If they feel like they're part of a community who misses them, who knows them by name, they'll love it. And if they love it, they're going to want to learn it. So that's how you can do it in the classroom. Super simple, fun. Doing it online is going to be a little bit trickier, but you can still do it. What you would do is you would have to send out either an email or some way to communicate. This student, your job is to make a treble clef, and it may be backwards, it may not have enough swirlies. That's okay. Or you can send a document that this person has to print out that music symbol and that person has to print out that music symbol, so that among all the students in whatever class, you've got matching pairs of all of them. And then when you go into whatever format you do, if it's Zoom or whatever format, and you've got the little Brady Bunch tiles, and everybody's got that, okay, Mark. And then you try to find the other student that matches. And then when they match, they hold up their cards until you've got all the matches. Once again, it's a simple, fun game to play. You let everybody take turns guessing so they're still engaged even if they've already flipped over their card. Super simple, fun game. You can do it in the classroom or you can do it via virtual learning. Friends, thank you for spending some time with me. I really appreciate all that you're doing to be optimistic right now, because, and here's a trite phrase, in these uncertain times, but the truth is they're very uncertain, and uncertain means unsettling. And you coming here and spending time here is such an act of optimism, and it's such an act of leadership for the communities that you work with your fellow teachers, and of course with your students, that you're out searching new ways to be even better at what you're doing, so that you can improve their experience, so that you can improve their sense of community, so that they can have some stability, so that they can feel, even in these uncertain times, I've got my music teacher to count on. My music teacher knows me by name and is giving me the good stuff, and it's helping me love, remember why we do this. So thank you. And yes, now is the time. Now is the time. So, sorry, I'm so glad you showed up. So in closing, the last thing I want to do is do one more from Classics Come Alive. And guess what? This, my friend Nutcracker, is about a composer who wrote a ballet all about you. What do you think about that? Yeah. All right. So let me get out. That was cheesy. Let me get out my notebook again. And for this one, and this should also be in your notes, you can do this with your students as well. And then, of course, one of the things you'd want to do is after you read a story of either a great composer or a great experience throughout the history of music is listen to some of that music. Listen to some of that composer's music. But when they know the story behind it, there's that phrase, it's hard to hate someone when you know their story. And going back a little bit and exploring the music from many different cultures, it's hard to fear a culture when that culture's song is in your heart. So our stories and our songs are great ways to get people to fall in love with music, with all the arts, with the humanities, so we can remember our humanity. And the more we remember our humanity and love it, the more we'll want to learn it. There's another soapbox. I'm sorry. Let's have some fun. So this is Tchaikovsky body tag. Listen carefully to the story. Every time you hear me say a part of the body, you have to tag that part of the body. Like if I say elbow, you have to tag your elbow. You will notice that I chose to do things that involve not touching the face just for safety and health reasons. So there may be a head, but touch back here. Model that for your students when you're doing it online or if you're in person. Ready? Here we go. Let's have some last fun. And I sure hope you're doing this at home. That would really tickle me, especially if you are at a coffee shop with your headphones on and you're in the corner and you're doing all of this and everybody's kind of looking over, and that would delight me very much. All right, here we go. Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky was born in 1840 in a small town in Russia. He showed big brains early on. He began learning piano at age 5. His little fingers were right at home on the piano keys. And by age 6, he was already fluent in French and German. But his parents didn't want him to be a professional musician. Tchaikovsky was heartbroken when they sent him away to a boys' school to train to become a civil servant. Tchaikovsky missed home very much, but he kept his hands busy by composing and practicing piano. Once he graduated, he spent a few years as a civil servant before finally getting to attend a music conservatory in St. Petersburg. While there, he got wonderful ear training in harmony as well as composition. After graduating, Tchaikovsky became a music professor at the Moscow Conservatory. While he wasn't paid a huge sum of money, it was enough to make at least some of the financial burden come off of his shoulders. Tchaikovsky's reputation as a composer started to grow with the premiere of his first piano concerto. He also began composing operas, and one of his most enduring works is his 1812 overture that has a hair-raising finale complete with actual cannon blasts. And my hair-raising is really something. I haven't had a haircut in about 3.5 months. Tchaikovsky was not fond of socializing. Imagine how much your knees would shake if you were famous but nervous about being around so many people. And Tchaikovsky was also nervous when he conducted. He would only conduct with one hand because he used the other hand to hold his head. He was afraid his head would fall off as he conducted. It's true. Eventually, he became slightly more comfortable. He was in such demand, and his music for the ballets Sleeping Beauty, Swan Lake, and The Nutcracker have been keeping dancers and audiences on their toes for years. Tchaikovsky kept at it till the very end. He conducted the premiere of his Symphony No. 6 only 9 days before he died. His beautiful melodies and lush harmonies warm hearts of listeners to this day. So once again, just a way to get the kids moving, to get them actively engaged, maybe to hear themselves as part of the story. And when we feel like we're part of the story, we engage in that story more and we learn to love it more. Friends, thank you so much. Thank you to Heritage Music Press. Thank you for TCDA for bringing me. And thank you for being such an inspiration and such a bright spot in the lives of our young people who need music now more than ever. I'm grateful for your time. My email's in the notes. If there's any questions you have or comments or thoughts or things you want to share, I welcome them. I'm grateful for you, and I can't wait to hear about what happens when we all get to be together in person again. Bye, friends.